My name is Bruce Carter. I'm 39 years old, and 5 days before Christmas, my mom threw me and my kids out like we were nothing after I spent $22,000 this year to keep her world from collapsing. The snowstorm was blurring the edges of everything. Thick, heavy flakes slapped against the duplex windows, the wind howling like it had something to say. I was slumped at the kitchen table, shoulders screaming from a 15-hour shift hauling lumber through whiteout conditions. My hands were still raw from wrangling a seized brake line on my pickup. The space heater wheezed in the corner, barely fighting off the cold that seeped through the walls like a bad memory. Olivia, 9, and Mark, 7, were giggling on the carpet behind me, taping paper ornaments to our crooked little tree. $15 off a gas station lot. Olivia had made a lopsided angel out of receipts. Mark was trying to cut a reindeer out of a paper towel. My phone buzzed on the table, rattling a stack of bills I'd been ignoring. Mom's name lit up. I thought it was another request, maybe something for the gravy boat or Deborah's emergency. That was the routine. I'd been their financial duct tape for years. So I answered, on speaker. "Bruce?" Mom said, her voice tight and clipped like she was holding her breath. "Christmas dinner's canceled for you." I blinked. The word's not landing right, huh? "Deborah's running it this year," she continued. "We're keeping it tight. No space for you and the kids." I sat up straight, beer forgotten. Olivia's tape roll hit the floor with a soft thud. Mark's scissors stopped mid-cut. "You're uninviting me?" I asked slowly, my voice already climbing. Mom sighed, that familiar long exhale that meant she was done explaining. "Deborah's kids need a calm space. Yours are spirited. It's just easier without the extra chaos." Chaos. My voice cracked, rising. "They're kids, Mom. They made ornaments out of junk mail." "I'm sorry," she said, and she did not sound sorry at all. "Deborah deserves a peaceful night. She's had it rough. We'll catch up later." Then she hung up. Just like that. I stared at the screen, the silence in the room sharp as glass. Olivia was looking at me like I'd broken something. Mark's little hands trembled, his half-made ornament tearing down the middle. "Are we bad?" he whispered. I dropped to my knees and pulled them both close, my heart pounding against my ribs like a warning. "No," I said, steady and low. "You're perfect. They're the ones who forgot how family works." But inside, something cracked open, something deep and old, something that had been building for years while I kept the lights on in a house I wasn't welcome in. Let me give you a little context. Deborah, my younger sister by 4 years, has always been the sun to my fog. Mom's golden girl, Dad's sweetheart. Even when she tanked their savings on a flower shop that didn't last half a year, she was just finding herself. I didn't complain when they leaned on me after that. I didn't blink when I picked up the tabs hotels, groceries, truck loan, even the vacation to Cancun they needed to de-stress. I paid because that's what family does, right? This year alone, $22,000. I know because I finally looked at the numbers. $7,000 on vacation stuff, flights, gas, park passes, $5,000 in groceries and bills, almost $3,000 on Dad's truck, $1,000 on Deborah's flop, and the mortgage $6,000 straight from my account. I didn't make 6 figures. I drove 18-wheelers across frozen highways while my kids ate canned soup and wore jackets from Goodwill. But I didn't say a word until they slammed the door on my kids for being too rough. I don't know what burned more, Mom's words, Deborah's smug silence, or the way Dad didn't even call to check if it was a mistake. That night, I didn't cry, I didn't yell. I opened my laptop. The mortgage account was still in my name, left over from when Dad forgot his login and I helped out. Autopay was on, due January 1st. I turned it off. Truck loan still set to debit from my account every 28th. I canceled that, too. Their little safety net was gone. No warning, no speech, just silence. Let them figure out what a Christmas without rowdy kids felt like. Over the next few days, their silence cracked. First it was a text, "Heat's acting up. Bruce, can you check it?" Ignored. Then a voicemail, "Furnace is down. Bruce, call us." I didn't. I was making cookies with the kids. The dough was from a dented can I'd grabbed on clearance. We laughed when Mark dumped too much cinnamon. I let Olivia frost the wonky reindeer. They didn't know the heat in our little duplex came from savings I should have used for boots, but they knew they were safe. And they knew I wasn't leaving them for someone else's comfort. Christmas morning, we huddled in our pajamas, unwrapped thrift store toys, and watched Elf on a scratched DVD. Olivia's doll had a weird eye. Mark's robot made strange whirring sounds. They beamed. My phone buzzed nonstop. Mom, Bruce, the furnace won't kick in. Dad, it's freezing. Where's the payment? Deborah, my twins are shivering, you monster. I sipped my coffee and watched Olivia show Mark how to braid the doll's hair. By nightfall, it was 45 degrees in their house. The truck hadn't moved all day. I imagined them wrapped in the blankets I bought last year, the roast cold, the lights dim, Deborah's perfect twins huddled like little ice sculptures. And I smiled. Not because I'm cruel, but because it finally felt like justice. Let's be clear, I didn't do anything to them. I just stopped doing everything for them. That's when things really started to unravel. The first sign they were truly spiraling came 2 days after Christmas. I was out shoveling the driveway, breath fogging in the bitter air, when Dad called. Again. I didn't answer. Voicemail. Bruce, 42 degrees in here. Deborah's kids are sick. You made your point, turn the mortgage back on. I let the message sit in my pocket while I watched Mark build a snow fort and Olivia paint the sky with her laughter. I used to think silence was surrender. Turns out, silence is power, especially when you're the only one who ever answered the phone. By day 3, Mom was sending frantic paragraphs. Please, the twins have the sniffles. Deborah can't focus. The heat guy won't come. We're your family. Oh, now we're family. Funny how that works. That night, I sat on the floor with the kids, playing Go Fish by flashlight while the wind clawed at the siding. Olivia asked if Deborah's kids were cold. I told her probably, but they had nice jackets. She nodded, dealt the cards, and didn't ask again. She's 9, but she's already starting to understand the difference between love and obligation. By December 30th, I stopped checking my phone entirely. Dad was up to voicemails every 2 hours. His tone had shifted, less angry, more desperate. Bruce, the pipes, the truck's dead. We're in trouble. Good. They wanted to play favorites. They picked the wrong kid. I kept to myself, went back to work. Another haul through snow country. Another night in the cab. Engine off to save fuel. My fingers numb. But my spine straighter than it had been in years. They were drowning. And I didn't owe them a life vest. I'd spent the better part of the last decade bailing them out. Grocery runs, birthday gifts, utility bills, not because I had extra, because I was afraid not to. Afraid they'd call me selfish. Afraid I'd be the villain. Turns out, I was the villain. Just not for the reasons I thought. New Year's Eve hit like a slap. I got home late, road salt caked on my boots, and found a note taped to the door. Olivia's handwriting. Daddy, we made a surprise. Inside paper hats, 2 mugs of cocoa, and a stack of peanut butter crackers on a paper plate. The kids were asleep on the couch, curled up like puppies. The tree lights flickered one last time. I sank into the recliner and cried quietly, fiercely. Not because I was sad, but because I finally knew what peace felt like. No demands, no debt, just 2 kids who loved me for showing up. January 1st. The mortgage bounced, auto pay canceled, truck loan failed. Their safety net had officially vanished. Deborah texted me mid-morning, "You're heartless." I stared at it for a long time, thought about replying. Instead, I forwarded it to my cousin Fred with no context. He replied with a single emoji. Fred's always been the black sheep too, the one who moved 3 states away and stopped answering calls. Smart guy. By the second week of January, I was back on the road, checking in with the kids via video every night. Olivia showed me a crayon drawing she titled Us Happy. Mark built a Lego dump truck and named it Bruce Jr. Meanwhile, the text from home started shifting tone. Mom, Bruce, please, we're cold. Dad pipes burst, water everywhere. Deborah, my kids are coughing. You did this. No, you did this. I just stopped being the bank. They weren't used to consequences. They were used to magic me snapping my fingers and problems disappearing. I stopped being their magician. That weekend, I met Logan, my old trucking buddy, for coffee at the Roadhouse. He ordered pancakes with extra syrup and listened while I laid it all out. The flower shop, the 22K, the disinvite, the shutdown. He whistled low. You're a dang legend. I shrugged, sipping black coffee. They chose her. I chose peace. That's not peace. He grinned. That's quiet war. And you're winning. Back at home, things were unraveling. Deborah's Instagram had gone from beach selfies to vague sadness quotes. Mom was posting passive-aggressive memes about family forgetting each other. Dad stopped showing up in pictures entirely. Fred messaged again, bruh. They're borrowing space heaters from neighbors. I laughed until I coughed. Finally, a little fresh air. The kicker, Deborah's husband, bailed the year before. She claimed it was stress. I always suspected he saw the red flags and ran. I should have taken notes. They were unraveling. Slowly, pitifully, like a sweater snagged on a nail. I just watched. Didn't gloat, didn't comment. Just watched the storm I used to shield them from hit full force. They didn't want my kids at Christmas. Well, now they didn't get heat at New Year's. Actions have consequences. But apparently, so does silence. January 7th started like any other frozen Midwest day. The snow had crusted over into thick, icy mounds, and the wind screamed like it was mourning something. I was under the kitchen sink, cursing a leaky pipe. When the doorbell rang 3 fast jabs like a warning, I wiped my hands on a towel and opened the door just enough to see Deborah standing there. No coat, no makeup, hair matted from snow. Her arms were wrapped around her chest like armor she forgot to bring. "Bruce?" she croaked. "I need to talk." I didn't move. Didn't open the door any wider. Just leaned on the frame. Arms crossed. "Talk." Then, her voice cracked. "Not out here. Please. The twins. They're sick." I let the silence stretch. I wanted her to feel it, the weight of every time they made me feel like background noise. Finally, I opened the door just enough for her to slip inside. She hovered near the radiator, shivering. Her confidence, the Instagram perfect persona, was gone. "I didn't know," she started. "Didn't know what? That throwing your brother and his kids out of Christmas would come back to bite you." "No." She looked up, eyes rimmed red. "That Mom and Dad were lying. About the flower shop. About everything." I stayed quiet, letting her fill the silence. She always hated silence. Mom, too. They filled it with noise so no one would ask the real questions. "They told you I blew the money," she said, "but they were using my name to run checks, fake invoices, taking loans in my name without telling me." I stared, my stomach sinking. She went on. "They said if it got out, they'd lose the house, their retirement, everything. So I kept quiet, took the blame. They promised me half the house when they sold. A trust for the twins. Said it was temporary. You let me think you were just irresponsible." I said slowly. "You let me pick up the pieces while they played victim." "I was scared," she whispered. "They said they'd cut me off too if I didn't go along. I didn't think they'd turn on you, on the kids." I laughed. One sharp bark that startled her. "You didn't think they'd turn Deborah. They turned decades ago. You just finally felt it." She winced. "I didn't know about the Christmas dinner. That was all, Mom. I swear." I stepped back, arms dropping to my sides. "Why are you here now?" "Because the money's gone. The scam's unraveling. The mortgage missed its payment. The truck's gone. And now?" She hesitated, swallowing hard. "The guy they borrowed from. He's not from a bank. Bruce. He's not patient." The air went still. "Wait," I said. "What guy?" She leaned against the wall like her legs might buckle. "Some local fixer. They forged checks to cover the first payment. He's been calling non-stop, threatening to show up." I stared at her, my brain connecting dots I hadn't dared to sketch before. "All those emergency payments," I said, "mostly to myself, all the vague requests, the unexpected bills, that was them buying time from a loan shark." She nodded. "They've been using me," I said, voice like ice. 22 grand this year alone to cover their mess, and you let them." She flinched. I thought it would end, that they'd fix it. I didn't know they'd throw me out like trash. Her eyes filled with tears. Real ones, maybe, but I didn't flinch. "They're not just broke. Bruce," she whispered, "they're in danger." "Not my problem," I said. Stepping back, "You could have said something years ago." "I know," she said, barely audible. I thought keeping quiet was protecting us all, but now, I shook my head. "Now you're scared. That's the only reason you're here." She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. She knew I was right. "Tell them I know," I said, walking to the door. "Tell your friendly loan shark too. And next time you show up, bring a coat." I shut the door. She stood there a second longer before trudging back into the snow. 3 days later, Fred called. "Dude, they're melting down." I stirred the soup pot. "Good." "No. Like, for real." Deborah posted everything. The forged checks, the loans, the lies. Dropped it online. Full expose. Banks are freezing accounts. Some guy showed up banging on their front door last night. I ladled soup into 3 bowls. Let him in. See how they like his payment terms. Fred laughed so hard he choked. You're a freaking legend, man. I didn't smile. Just set the bowls on the table. Olivia slid into her seat, Mark trailing behind her. They didn't know any of this. Just that we had soup, that Dad was home, that we were okay. And that was enough. Later that night, Mom called. I didn't pick up. Then Dad, then Deborah. Same cycle, different tone. Now it was regret, panic, apologies that sounded more like demands. Help us, Bruce. You were always the responsible one. You can't let this happen. But I could, because it wasn't happening to them. It was happening because of them. The reckoning didn't come with fireworks. It came with frostbite. January 12th dawned colder than sin. The news was calling it the worst winter snap in a decade. -5, wind chill. Don't ask. I was out splitting logs in the backyard when my phone lit up with a flood of texts. Mom, Bruce, the pipes froze. The whole kitchen is flooding. Dad truck's dead, heat's off, call the loan guy, pay it now. Deborah, my twins can't stop coughing, the walls are iced, this is on you. On me? Of course. I tossed another log into the pile, the axe sinking deep like it knew exactly what I was feeling. Inside, Olivia and Mark were building a cardboard castle in the living room. The radiator hummed. Our duplex was far from perfect, but it was warm. It was ours. Around noon, I was frying ham slices on the stove, flipping them with the kind of care people reserve for steak, when the doorbell rang again. Same desperate rhythm. I cracked the door. Dad stood there, hunched, frost caked on his eyebrows, holding a pawn ticket in one shaking hand. His face was pale, his eyes wild. Bruce, he rasped, voice barely above the wind. We need your help. I didn't step aside. Do you now? He looked past me at the warm glow inside. The house, it's a disaster. Pipes burst. Furnace is dead. We pawned what we could. He's coming. Bruce, that guy, the one we borrowed from. I nodded slowly. The one you didn't tell me about. While draining me dry to keep him quiet, his face crumpled. It got out of hand. We thought we could fix it. No, I said, calm and steady. You thought I would fix it. He tried to push the door further open. We made a mistake. Deborah's out. She's saying everything now. The banks are after us. If you don't help, you'll what? Freeze, I said. Voice like ice. Call the guy who matters so much. Or maybe sell one of Deborah's designer bags. He flinched. We're desperate. You should have thought about that before telling me I wasn't welcome at the dinner table. I said, before calling my kids too rough for your curated life. Lois was emotional. He said weakly, it was a misunderstanding. I smiled, sharp and joyless. No, it was a declaration. Then I shut the door. He pounded it once, twice, then silence. I turned the burner down and plated the ham. Olivia wandered in, rubbing her eyes. Who was it? No one, I said, just cold wind pretending to be important. She giggled, climbed onto a chair, and stole a slice from my plate. I didn't stop her. That night, the texts came nonstop, full meltdown mode. Mom, we'll lose the house. Dad, he's threatening to show up. Deborah, they're blaming me. I told the truth. You have to step in. I turned my phone off. Let them stew in the silence they handed me for Christmas. The next morning, Fred called. You broke the internet. He said, excuse me. Deborah's post. It's viral. Screenshots, emails, forged docs. People are eating it up. Half the town's sharing it. I stirred my coffee. Good for her. Late, but good. They're getting hammered. He continued. Mom's old friends are cutting her off. Dad's credit's frozen. The guy they borrowed from apparently showed up yesterday, left a dent in the porch door. Not my porch, I said. Fred cackled. Man, this is next level. You didn't just cut them off, you launched a nuke. I didn't respond. Just watched Olivia and Mark draw smiley faces on the foggy windows. Peace has a funny way of showing up once you stop answering chaos. January 15th, the inevitable happened. A certified letter showed up. Mom and Dad were being sued. Default judgment from a local contractor. Loan gone bad. Collateral seizure in progress. I read it twice. Then I framed it. Hung it over my desk like a reminder. The only call I took that week was from the clinic. Deborah's kids were admitted for pneumonia. Stable but shaken. She'd signed them in under my last name. That stung, but not enough. I dropped off a box of blankets at the clinic reception. No note, no signature. Let the nurses make up their own story. By January 20th, the house was officially condemned due to burst pipes and black mold. Truck long gone, credit shattered. Repossession notices tacked to the front door like Christmas cards no one wanted. Mom sent me a photo. Happy. I stared at it, then deleted it. They had burned every bridge and were shocked to find they couldn't swim. That weekend, I took the kids sledding, built a snowman with 3 crooked arms, topped it with my old trucking cap. Mark named him Gramps. Olivia cackled. We toasted marshmallows in the fireplace that night. Cheap, sticky joy, pure warmth, real family. And as the snow fell outside, burying the wreckage they built, I felt lighter than I had in years. February crept in bitter and brittle, each morning colder than the last. The snow hadn't let up. It just kept falling, like nature was trying to bury the past. Mom and Dad were out of the house by then, evicted by their own bad decisions. The mortgage company reclaimed what was left of the place. I drove by just once to see it. Windows boarded up, yard a mess, a foreclosure notice flapping against the mailbox like a surrender flag. It looked smaller than I remembered. No one answered when I knocked at Fred's later that night. He was too busy laughing over the phone. "Bruce," he wheezed. "Deborah's staying with our second cousin in a trailer out near Route 10. Mom's couch hopping. Dad's trying to sell power tools he doesn't own. They're toast." I didn't say anything, just listened. "They're still blaming you," he added. "You, the storm. Karma, the mailman. Anyone but themselves." Of course they were. People like them don't do accountability, they do deflection. Guilt, drama. But guilt only works when someone picks it up. I dropped it like a rusted chain. My phone buzzed the next morning, another number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. "Bruce," Mom's voice, cracked and dry. "We're losing everything. Please, we didn't know it would fall apart like this." Didn't know. They knew. They knew when they forged signatures and drained my accounts. They knew when they picked Deborah again. They knew when they slammed the door in my kids' faces on Christmas. Now they just didn't like the outcome. A week later, I got a letter from the school. Olivia's art had been selected for the district exhibit. Mark won a little science fair ribbon for building a baking soda volcano that exploded across the entire hallway. He told me he aimed it at the principal on purpose. That was the kind of pride I'd never gotten to feel growing up. Now I was swimming in it. We had everything we needed. Not much more, but that was fine, because for the first time, I wasn't bleeding dry to keep other people comfortable. I started saving. A real emergency fund. Fixed the pickup properly, took the kids out for diner pancakes on Saturdays, something we never used to do because every extra dollar had a destination that wasn't us. One evening, I opened my email and saw a message from Deborah. Short, blunt, "They're trying to borrow from my twins' school fund. Just thought you should know." I didn't reply. That was her mess to untangle. She could finally understand what it felt like to be the backbone while the rest of them feasted. February turned into March. The snow softened. The ground thawed. Spring felt different this time, less like survival, more like rebirth. On Easter, we dyed eggs in chipped mugs and Mark dropped half of them on the floor. Olivia drew faces on the survivors and named one Grandma No. I laughed so hard I almost dropped the tray. That night, we made grilled cheese and watched cartoons until the kids passed out mid-episode. I carried them to bed, one at a time. Their arms flopped around my shoulders like warm blankets. And I stood there for a long time after, just listening to them breathe. It was peaceful. I hadn't known how loud my life was until it finally went quiet. The last message I ever got from Mom came on a rainy April Thursday. One line, "We miss you." I didn't respond, because they missed what I gave, not who I was. They missed the wallet, the fixer, the fool who never said no. That guy was gone. What remained was a man with boundaries, 2 joyful kids, and a home built from hard days and honest work, not manipulation. Sometimes revenge is loud. Mine was silent. No lawyers, no threats, no speeches, just subtraction, one autopay at a time. And in the end, it wasn't me who destroyed them. It was the storm they started and the silence I left them in. Story 2. Thanksgiving used to be a show. My dad insisted everything be perfect, not because he cared about tradition, he cared about appearances. The turkey had to be golden, the table had to shine, and the illusion had to hold. No matter how broken we were underneath, no one could see the cracks. This year, the cracks split wide open. 2 messages shattered it. First, from my dad. "Don't come to Thanksgiving." Then, from my sister Nicole. We'll pretend we don't know you. No explanation, no buildup, just exile. I sat on my couch staring at my phone. The Netflix show forgotten in the background. My heart didn't race. I didn't cry. I just knew. They were done with me. Or maybe they thought I was done with them. They weren't wrong. It had started weeks earlier. My mom asked me to help her with some online forms. She's not tech-savvy, and I was happy to help. While sorting through her files, I found a second bank statement, a hidden account, strange transactions, dinner for two at upscale places, hotel bookings, jewelry. None of it made sense unless you knew what to look for. My father, who hadn't taken mom on a vacation in 5 years, was cheating. I didn't tell her at first. I wrestled with it. My mom had built her life around him. What would this do to her? But then the texts came. The coldness, the finality. If they could cut me out that easily, they'd already chosen their side. So I chose mine. I called my mom, told her everything, dates, receipts, names. I didn't soften the blow. She said nothing at first. Then she whispered, "Thank you." That was 3 days ago. Now, my cousin Henry texted me, "Your dad's sleeping in his truck. Denny's on Route 9. Looks rough. Think your mom kicked him out." I didn't respond. I didn't gloat. I just stared out my window. The next morning, there was a knock. I opened the door. There he was, my father. Unshaven, pale, jacket wrinkled like he'd slept in it for days. "I need a place," he said. I leaned on the doorframe, calm, cold. I told her, I said, about everything. His eyes flickered. He didn't deny it, just started rambling. It wasn't serious. She misunderstood. "I just need time." I stepped back, pulled out my phone, and called Mom. "He's here. Don't let him in," she said, voice firm. I returned to the door. She said no. He looked stunned, as if reality just snapped. Then he walked away. 2 days later, Mom called me again. She tried to steal from me. She said, "Nicole said she was transferring money for groceries." I walked back in and saw her sending $300 to herself. That was the tipping point. I told Mom everything. The gas money Nicole kept taking, the cards she borrowed and forgot to return, the old habits from high school that never died. Mom went quiet. Then she said, "She's not welcome here anymore." That night, Nicole blew up my phone. Rants, blame, accusations. I didn't respond, but they weren't done. On Monday, Mom called again. "They're here, with a lawyer." I drove straight to her place. Parked, took a deep breath. Nicole stood on the porch, smug, my dad behind her, and a man in a suit flipping through papers. "This is Martin," Nicole said, "our lawyer." He handed Mom papers. "Your husband is filing for his share of the house. Given Nicole's financial contributions, the property is being listed for sale." Nicole added, "It's nothing personal. You can find somewhere manageable." I asked, loud enough for the neighbors, "What exactly have you contributed?" She stuttered, "They thought Mom would fold. They didn't know she was ready. Last week, I'd brought her to my friend James, a property attorney. We dug into every detail. Mom had refinanced the home in her name years ago. With inheritance money, Nicole never paid a cent. I handed Martin our documents. His expression changed fast. "And this isn't what I was told." "No," I said, "it's not." They left, silent. But it wasn't over. That night, our neighbor Mr. Langley called. "Saw them in your garden? Looked like they were digging." I drove over, found the spot. Dug. 3 feet down, a locked box. Inside every important document Mom owned, IDs, deeds, family photos. They tried to bury her life, but we weren't done fighting. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Nicole's face smirking, smug, like she hadn't just tried to bury our mother's life in a shallow backyard grave. The box contained everything: birth certificates, the original house deed, health insurance info, even old letters from my grandfather. They hadn't just wanted to hurt Mom, they wanted to erase her. By morning, I was wide awake and furious. I took everything to James. We scanned and secured it all, then made triple digital backups. James sent Nicole and my dad a cease and desist letter worded sharply enough to draw blood. But I wasn't done. I started digging into Nicole's finances. Something about her recent lifestyle didn't match the reality she portrayed. A few months ago, she posted a picture of her new living room set, sleek, modern, expensive looking. She captioned it, "Finally treating myself after a hard year." That alone didn't bother me until I remembered she hadn't had a job for 6 months. She was still mooching gas money from Mom during that hard year. I started tracing what I could. I found a personal loan in mom's name, $12,000, taken out 6 weeks prior. I double-checked the identity protection service mom had once signed up for. Sure enough, it flagged 2 separate accounts recently opened in her name. Nicole had stolen mom's identity. I printed every statement, every forged signature, every loan approval email. Then I gave it all to mom. She stared at the papers, her face calm, too calm. After a long moment, she whispered, "It's time." We went straight to the police, then the bank, fraud report filed, accounts frozen. Nicole's so-called lifestyle started crumbling overnight. The furniture was repossessed. Her car was locked out remotely. The apartment she was renting under fake pay stubs evicted her within 3 days. She tried calling, first crying, then raging. I listened to the first 2 voicemails, then I blocked her. But she wasn't the only one circling the drain. Dad tried to appeal the home situation, arguing he was legally entitled to marital property. What he didn't know, what none of us knew until recently, was that mom had quietly filed for legal separation over a year ago. She wasn't sure she'd go through with a full divorce, but now there was no hesitation. James expedited the filing. Within 2 weeks, the divorce was finalized. Dad had no claim to the house, no access to accounts, and thanks to a restraining order, we made sure he'd never set foot on the property again. Then came the voicemail that pushed everything over the edge. "You did this to us," Nicole hissed. "You poisoned mom against us. You'll regret it." It was a threat, but it was also evidence. We updated the police report. 2 nights later, Dad showed up at my apartment. Again. This time, he didn't look angry. He looked exhausted, hollowed out. "I have nowhere else," he said. I didn't yell, I didn't slam the door. I just handed him a printed list of local shelters and a copy of the fraud charges Nicole was now facing. "You both made this mess," I said. "You can clean it up." Then I closed the door. But the story didn't end there, not yet. I still had one more card to play. Months ago, before all of this blew up, Nicole bragged about a remote consulting gig she'd landed. Something about social branding for wellness startups. She talked like she was running an empire, but I dismissed it as her usual exaggeration. Now I dug into it. The company was small, a boutique health brand run out of Arizona. Nicole had listed herself on their website Strategic Finance Director. Big title for someone who once bounced a check to cover concert tickets. I looked closer. Her LinkedIn claims she managed nonprofit budgets and coordinated donor tax filings. All lies. More interesting, she'd submitted forged W-2s and inflated income to get this job. I gathered everything: resume, tax forms, screenshots of old messages where she admitted she faked a little experience, and emailed it to the startup's HR contact. They responded within hours. Nicole was fired. No reference, no severance. I waited until that was done before delivering the final blow. Mom and I filed a civil lawsuit. Identity theft, damages, emotional distress. Nicole had stolen over $5,000 using fake credentials. That pushed the charges into felony territory. The arrest came quietly. She was taken in at her apartment parking lot, released the next day on bond. But her name was in the system now. Her social media went silent. No more cryptic quotes about fake friends. No more spa selfies. Just gone. But Dad wasn't finished trying to slither his way back. He sent letters, handwritten, long and rambling. He claimed Nicole had manipulated him, that he didn't understand what she was doing, that he missed the family, that he just wanted to come home. Home. That bridge had burned long ago. So I burned what was left. Remember the woman Dad had been cheating with? The one whose name showed up on the hotel receipts? Her name was Erica. I tracked her down not to fight but to inform. I sent her everything. Proof of Dad's marriage, screenshots, photos of the home he still shared with Mom. Her reply was short: "I had no idea, thank you." 2 days later, she posted on Instagram, "Turns out my fiancé was already married and homeless." It went viral among her friends. Dad's name got dragged. He tried calling Erica again. She blocked him. He became a ghost in his own town. His poker group cut him off. His gym canceled his membership after complaints. Even the local bar stopped letting him run a tab. Nicole. She moved into her car, Mom's old Prius. Ironically, she started a GoFundMe titled "Starting Over After Family Betrayal." It raised $18. I checked twice, but this wasn't revenge anymore. This was cleanup. That week, Mom and I filed for permanent restraining orders, granted within 72 hours. We bought new locks, security cameras, got her utilities moved into an LLC I set up for her protection. And for the first time in years, we were safe. Really safe. You'd think that after the arrests, the lawsuits, and the restraining orders, things would finally quiet down. They didn't. Not because we didn't want peace, we did, but because Nicole and Dad didn't understand how to stop. They were like fires that couldn't burn out unless they took something else down with them. 3 weeks after Nicole's arrest, Mom received a notice from the IRS, a fraud alert. It flagged irregularities with a small business tax filing under her name. Apparently, Nicole had filed taxes using Mom's identity, claiming income from her bogus wellness job. At first, I thought it was an error, but no, Nicole had listed Mom as a silent partner, forged digital signatures, and even claimed tax deductions for equipment she never owned. That's when I contacted James again. He reached out to a tax attorney he trusted, and within days, we were prepping to send everything to federal investigators. But something odd happened in the middle of all that. Dad called again, from a burner number. I shouldn't have answered, but I did. His voice was low, raspy, defeated. "I have something to give you," he said. "You're going to want to see it." I met him at a diner. I didn't say a word, just sat in the booth while he slid an envelope across the table. Then he left. Inside were 2 things: a signed bank statement and a typed-out message. The bank document showed a second personal loan taken out in Mom's name, one we hadn't found yet. The typed message, a confession. Nicole and Dad had planned to open a business using the stolen money. She'd convinced him to cut Mom out entirely. They thought if they kept her distracted long enough, they could cash out and disappear. He said it all unraveled faster than he expected, and now he was sorry. I didn't care about his apology, but that statement, that was gold. We added it to the fraud case. With that, Nicole's charges escalated. Federal wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy. And Dad? His statement tied him to the conspiracy. He went from reluctant bystander to active participant in a crime. Things snowballed from there. That same week, a bank that had been monitoring an old, frozen account contacted Mom. It was a savings account her mother, my grandmother, had set up decades ago. When Dad tried to access it years ago, the bank froze it due to suspicious activity. Now that the fraud investigation cleared Mom's name and officially removed Dad from her financial life, the account was released. The balance, $148,000. Mom didn't cry, she didn't cheer, she just nodded and said, "It's finally over." She bought a small cottage 2 towns over, brick porch, quiet garden, and a view of the lake she used to take me to as a kid. She named the Wi-Fi network Peace at Last. Nicole and Dad, they were nowhere to be found, until they were. The first sign came in the form of a letter, handwritten, no return address. Just 5 words, "You ruined everything, enjoy it." I burned it. Then came a series of strange texts from unknown numbers. "You think this is over? I hope your mother chokes on her garden tomatoes. See you soon." I forwarded everything to James. He filed a police report. We added it to the harassment case, and then I bought cameras, set up alerts, secured the new house from every angle. We weren't playing anymore, but the final surprise wasn't a letter. It wasn't a voicemail, it was a tax notice. Nicole had been reported by her former employer, the startup she scammed. They'd filed a whistleblower report with the IRS after receiving documentation of her fraud. And then the IRS came knocking. She owed back taxes on nearly $30,000. She tried blaming everything on Mom, claimed she was forced into fraud by a manipulative upbringing. The story didn't stick. Because we had documents, voicemails, bank logs, and most damning of all, her own emails bragging about beating the system. One by one, the walls closed in. She lost her last credit line. Her car was impounded. She was arrested again, this time on federal charges. Her GoFundMe page was reported for fraud and taken down. And Dad, he was staying in a motel off Route 12, paid in cash, sometimes not even that. He tried appealing to Mom again, claiming he was confused, used, and unwell. But by then, we didn't care. We'd blocked him from everything but one final piece of paperwork. There was still a life insurance policy in Nicole's name. Years ago, Dad added her as a co-signer, said it was to help her build credit. Now, with fraud charges and investigations piling up, that policy became a financial liability. James filed a motion to have her name removed. The policy was frozen. Dad lost the only bit of security he thought he had left. And with Nicole behind bars this time for a minimum of 2 years, he truly had no one. I watched him walk out of a courtroom once, thin, ashen. Nobody waiting for him. No car, no calls, no support, just silence. Mom, she baked bread that night. Real bread. The kind she used to make when I was little. Before the noise, before the chaos. She made 2 plates. We ate quietly, watching the lake outside the window. The leaves had started to turn. And then she said, softly, "This feels like family." You'd think peace would finally feel like peace. But even after all the arrests, restraining orders, audits, and lawsuits, there was still this lingering weight, a silence that felt more like someone holding their breath than exhaling. It had been a few months since Nicole's sentencing. 2 years minimum for identity theft, tax fraud, and conspiracy. No chance of early parole, not after she violated the terms of her bail with those threats. Dad had disappeared again. Last we heard, he was squatting in an abandoned house with no running water. Word spread from someone at the shelter who used to play cards with him. Even they'd stopped answering his calls. Mom's life, by contrast, was finally becoming hers again. She planted vegetables in her new garden. She joined a book club. She even started painting badly, but with joy. For the first time in her adult life, she was allowed to be something other than someone else's punching bag. And as for me, I moved out of the city, took a remote job, bought a fixer-upper. Nothing fancy, just space, quiet, and locks that only I held the keys to. But then it happened again. Another letter. Handwritten, no name, no return address. Inside was a single photo. Nicole and me, aged 10 and 8, playing in the sprinklers in the backyard. We were laughing, carefree, unaware. On the back, in thick red ink, we were a family once. I didn't show it to Mom. She didn't need that. I shredded it. Set the shreds on fire. Watched them curl and blacken in a glass ashtray on my porch. This was how they worked. Reminders. Guilt grenades. Little explosions designed to make you question your peace. But it didn't work this time. I wasn't the same person anymore. About 3 weeks later, I got an email. From Erica. Yeah, that Erica, the woman Dad had proposed to while still married to Mom. Her message was short. He showed up at my work, told me you destroyed him. I told him he destroyed himself. He's lost, and he blames you. Watch your back. I thanked her, then blocked her. Nothing personal, I just didn't want anything that connected to that chapter of my life lingering. I wasn't afraid, I was prepared. My cameras were online. My neighbors were aware. The local police had our restraining orders on file. And James had already warned us if they showed up again. We wouldn't just press charges, we'd make sure they stuck. But Dad never showed. Instead, he sent one last message. Typed, signed, delivered by certified mail. It was a rambling, barely coherent letter about how he regretted everything, how he'd tried to be a good father, how Nicole had manipulated him, how he just wanted to fix it. There was no apology, just excuses. Excuses layered with deflection. But the kicker, he ended with, "You've become cold, like your mother." Maybe that's what we both deserved. No, what they deserved was accountability. And they got it. The final nail came quietly. James called one morning with an update from the IRS. Turns out Nicole had been underreporting income for years, long before she even scammed Mom. And with the federal case open, agents were digging through everything. They uncovered 3 more fraudulent tax returns. More money, more evidence, more years added to her sentence. She tried to file an appeal. It was denied. Her public defender tried for leniency. The judge didn't blink. She was officially sentenced to 4 years. No parole, no reduction. That same week, Dad was picked up for trespassing at a local warehouse. No charges stuck, but his name made it into the paper. Just a line in the crime blotter. But to him, that was worse than jail. His shame was public now. No one would take his side again. He was a ghost before, but now he was a memory. And finally, Mom and I felt what we hadn't in a very long time: calm. The holidays rolled around again. Thanksgiving came. Just the 2 of us. She made sweet potatoes and turkey and that cranberry orange thing I always pretended to hate but secretly loved. We laughed. We told stories. No one yelled. No one manipulated. No one cried over things that couldn't be fixed. And when we finished eating, she leaned back in her chair and said, "Do you realize how far we've come?" I nodded. And for the first time in over a decade, I truly believed we were free. Not because we got revenge, but because we got clarity. We saw the truth, we faced it, and we chose ourselves over the illusion of family. So, here's what I'll say to anyone still stuck in the middle of that kind of storm. You're not crazy. You're not cruel for cutting people off. You're not wrong for protecting your peace. Sometimes the people who hurt you will tell the world you're the villain because they can't handle being seen as what they are. Let them. You can be the villain in their story and still be the hero in your own. That's the end of the story. But if you made it this far, thank you for reading. Let me know in the comments, what would you have done in my place? And if you're someone who's gone through something similar, I hope this gave you something real to hold on to. Peace isn't found in the past. It's chosen. And today, I choose it. Every single day. Story 3. Looking forward to our vacation, I said, lacing up my sneakers. You don't know. My sister blinked. It was last week. My dad didn't even look up from his beer. Yeah, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. It was a vacation without dead weight. Everyone chuckled awkwardly, except me. I stood up, tied the last knot in my shoes, and walked out the door. That was the moment. That's when it all shifted. They thought I'd just vanish like I always did. Let it pass. Let them laugh. What they didn't know was that I had a plan, and it started the second Jenna's group text hit my phone. Family reunion. Sunday, same place. Dry. No emojis. No warmth. No mention of the 7 months of silence. No acknowledgement of what happened last Thanksgiving when my father looked me in the eye and told me I wasn't his son anymore. I wasn't planning to go, not to the reunion anyway, but I had other business in town. Every year, like clockwork, we did a family trip up to the lake. Same cabins, same greasy food, same Monopoly meltdown after dinner. Nobody missed it. Even the year Jenna was 9 months pregnant, she showed. We got a bigger cabin last year, expecting to bring friends or significant others, and I waited all summer for that group chat. Nothing came, no planning, no spreadsheet, no sign it was happening. So I figured maybe they'd talk about it at the reunion. I pulled into my parents' gravel driveway around 4. The garden was loud with cousins splashing in the pool, burgers on the grill, that sharp citronella sweat smell clouding the air. It looked like any other year, but it wasn't. People waved, but no one made space. No one called my name. Jenna was the first to spot me. She was under the patio umbrella feeding macaroni to her toddler, eyes flicking toward me like she'd been dreading this moment. She gave a tight smile and a smaller shake of her head, like be careful. I made a plate, leaned by the cooler, waited for Dad to call me over. Nothing. Just small talk flowing around me like I was invisible. After an hour, I walked up to Jenna, caught her alone near the side gate. When are we heading to the lake? She froze, like full body freeze. You don't know? Know what? It already happened, she whispered. I waited for the laugh, the gotcha, the punchline. It never came. Her face just flattened. Exhausted? Apologetic? You left already, I asked, still clinging to some version of denial. She nodded. I didn't ask why, I asked who. That's when she said it. They took Colin, our second cousin, not even close family. Just some guy who got into real estate and started sucking up to my dad like he was auditioning to be adopted. And right on cue, from the barbecue, my father turned and shouted, it was a vacation without dead weight. Everyone laughed again. That forced, strained kind of laugh. Mom giggled too, holding deviled eggs like none of it was cruel. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I just walked to the porch, slid on my shoes, and left. They thought I was going home to stew. They were wrong. I didn't drive to my apartment. I took the old highway out toward the foothills, where the road narrows and the signal dies. Behind an abandoned diner was a self-storage unit I'd been renting for half a year. Cash only, fake name. Not because I was hiding anything illegal, but because I needed a place off-grid, just in case. Inside the unit, one fireproof box. Inside the box, copies of documents, a burner phone, old photos, and an envelope I took from my dad's study the night he disowned me. Never told anyone I had it. I found it hidden behind tax returns. It held 2 things: a letter to my mom dated 10 years ago, and a birth certificate. Not mine, not Jenna's. A different surname altogether. At the time, I didn't get it. I thought maybe it was some weird family adoption story, but after months of digging, I pieced it together. The woman in the letter, my mom's sister, the boy, her son. They raised him for 3 years, then gave him back. That boy was Colin. So this wasn't just about favoritism. They had raised Colin like a spare, like a backup son. And now that I was cut off, they were slotting him back in like a replacement part. Now, this wasn't just cruelty. It was strategy. So I got to work. I pulled the deed to the lake property. My grandfather had updated the trust before he died, giving part ownership directly to me, a tiny technicality my dad overlooked because he never read anything unless it was in bold font and yelled at him. Legally, they were trespassing last week, but I wasn't calling the cops. Not yet. That weekend, I called in a favor from an old friend, a property lawyer named Marcus. We drafted a notice of co-ownership, proof that I held equal control over the cabin. I didn't want to sue. Not unless I had to. I wanted leverage. 2 nights later, I got a call. It was Jenna. She was whispering in her garage. "He knows I told you," she said. "Did he?" "No," she cut in. "But he said if I can't be loyal, I can leave." "Are you?" I already packed. At 3:17 a.m., Jenna pulled up in a weathered minivan. Her kids were asleep in the back, her bags tossed between car seats and snack wrappers. I didn't ask questions. I opened the door, let her in, gave the kids my bed, slept on the couch. In the morning, we drank cold coffee in silence. "You still have the envelope?" she asked. I slid it across the table. She didn't open it, just stared. Then said, "Let's do it." That's when it stopped being personal and became a plan. We didn't wait. By Thursday morning, we were already driving up to the lake house. Jenna's minivan was packed with juice boxes, a Bluetooth speaker, and a locksmith I hired through an app under the name Eric Madsen. The drive was eerie fog curled around the hills like something out of a dream, or a warning. When we pulled up, everything was still. No boats, no noise, not even the usual junk mail. It was quiet like the house itself was waiting. The locksmith changed all the locks. I swapped out the key box and added a security camera hidden in a hollowed-out birdhouse by the porch. Motion sensors, updated code pad, new smart thermostat. I wasn't just reclaiming a cabin, I was reclaiming years of being ignored. The deed, freshly notarized, went up on the family's private Facebook group at 900 a.m. sharp. Jenna posted it. Effective immediately. Access to the Cedar Lake property requires permission from both owners. Legal action will follow unauthorized entry. Contact Milo for questions. That was me now. Milo, not Nathan, not Nate. Milo, with the power they never thought I'd hold. 6 hours later, the first comment came from Mom. "This isn't funny." I replied with a PDF scan of the deed. Dad didn't comment. He called Jenna. When she didn't pick up, he left a message that sounded like every speech he's ever given, boiling rage hiding behind fake hurt. "You're tearing this family apart." "No, Dad, you did that when you made vacation plans behind my back." The fallout came faster than we expected. Jenna had a friend at the county office. We pulled property records for our childhood home and found something surprising. It was in Mom's name alone. Technically, Dad had no legal claim. So we sent a letter, not aggressive, not angry, just facts. Jenna wrote it. She laid everything out: the favoritism, the years of being treated like a backup plan, the pressure, the threats. She mentioned Colin, how he'd been slotted in like a Lego piece to replace what they'd broken. The last line, "You get one chance to fix this." 3 days later, Dad went nuclear. He cornered Jenna in the driveway, yelled at her in front of her kids, tossed her things into trash bags and threw them on the lawn. Mom didn't stop him, didn't even flinch. That night, we dropped our second surprise, a private video link only viewable by family. The first half was home movies, me and Jenna as kids, Easter egg hunts, birthday cakes, slow zooms on smiles that used to mean something, then the fade to black, then the bombshell. Photos of the letter, Colin's birth certificate, the hidden letter from my mom's sister, pictures of Colin at age 3 in our house, holding our dog, blowing out candles with my dad kneeling beside him, grinning. A voiceover. Jenna's voice laid out the timeline. The truth, how our parents had taken in our cousin, raised him in secret, then returned him like an unwanted package. And how now, years later, they had tried to slot him back in after cutting me out. They didn't just ignore Milo, they replaced him. We knew it would cause chaos. We were counting on it. The next morning, Jenna emailed the video link to the real estate firm where Colin worked. Just one line. "Thought you should know who you're working with." Meanwhile, I filed a freeze request on the family trust, Grandpa's old estate fund, something Dad had been skimming from for years. It turned out that payouts were conditional. Both heirs had to be active and included members of the family. Guess what? He disowned one, kicked the other out. Trust frozen. Bank access locked. Legacy in free fall. By Sunday, I was watching from our apartment window as Dad pulled into the parking lot. He wasn't alone. Mom was with him. She looked like she hadn't slept. He looked like someone who expected the world to explain itself to him. They rang the bell. We didn't answer. I watched them through the peephole. Mom looked around, unsure. Dad stayed still, arms crossed like the building should bow before him. After a few minutes, they left, but not before arguing in the parking lot. I watched the footage back on my phone later, Mom grabbing his arm, him shrugging her off. For the first time, he looked small. Not sorry, never that, but confused, like the script had changed and no one gave him the new lines. 2 days later, we got a call from our Aunt Mom's sister, Colin's biological mother. She hadn't seen the video, but the whispers had started. She wanted to talk. We met halfway cheap diner, cracked linoleum floor, syrupy iced tea. She looked older than I remembered, worn down. I never gave him up, she said, voice shaking. They said it was temporary. Just until I got back on my feet. They lied. Jenna said, calm, firm. They told me I wasn't fit, that he was better off with them. Then one day, they brought him back. Said he'd adjust, like he was a piece of luggage. I asked if she still talked to him. No, not since he turned 16. He cut me off. Why? Because your dad told him I didn't want him. Silence fell over the table. That was the twist we didn't expect. This wasn't just about us being replaced. Colin had been lied to too, groomed into loyalty, fed a version of the truth where we were the villains and they were the heroes. It changed things. Jenna called him. No threats, no accusations, just a message I think we've both been lied to. I'd like to talk. He didn't respond. But 3 days later, an envelope showed up under our door. Inside an old photo, me, Jenna, and Colin, probably 6 or 7 on the swings behind the lake cabin, smiling. On the back in neat handwriting. You lied to all of us. No signature. But we knew. The week after was quiet. Too quiet. Dad tried to stage a family meeting. We agreed to come, but only to finish what we started. We arrived at the house like guests at a wake. Everything was familiar and dead at the same time. The photos on the wall, the scent of overused fabric softener, the clock that never ticked right. They greeted us with fake warmth. Mom tried to hug Jenna. She stepped back. We sat down. Dad started his speech, full of cliches and crocodile tears. Family is complicated. Things are said in anger. Nobody's perfect. Then I pulled out one last envelope. Not the letter, a different one. Inside Grandpa's real instructions, the part Dad never saw. The clause that said if one heir was alienated without cause and could prove it then, the trust, the property, the lake house would fall to them alone. Jenna hadn't seen it either. She looked at me, shocked. I passed it to them. 4 words. This is your eviction. No yelling. No drama. Just the sound of a chair scraping across hardwood as we stood and walked out. We expected a storm. Threats. Legal letters. Rants on the family group chat. Something. Anything. But what came was worse. Silence. No calls. No emails. No cryptic messages from distant relatives. It was like someone had yanked the power cord from the entire family. At first, Jenna was nervous. She kept checking the mailbox like a subpoena would materialize out of thin air. I was more curious. I knew Dad his rage was too loud to sit quietly, so if he wasn't screaming, it meant he was planning something. We pulled court records, nothing. We called the lawyer Dad used to brag about his golf buddy. The guy told us, politely, that he no longer represented either of our parents. Then we checked the trust ledger. That's when we realized what happened. They didn't fight back. They ran. Right before the trust was officially frozen, Dad had scraped out every cent he legally could. It wasn't much, most of it was locked up in bad investments or subject to the clause, but he took what he could, cashed out. Everything else still ours. The lake cabin, the vehicles, the name. They had spent decades building this empire of control, and in one quiet month, it crumbled. That's when Jenna got the email. Her old Yahoo account, the one she hadn't checked in over a year. Subject line, let's meet. It was from Colin. We didn't know if we could trust him, but we needed to know where he stood. We picked a park by the river. Public, safe, food trucks nearby, bright daylight, no drama. He was already there when we arrived. No flashy entrance, just a tired guy in a hoodie sitting on a bench. He looked older. Not physically, just worn. I watched the video, he said twice. Then he looked right at Jenna. I'm sorry. Not performative, not defensive, just tired. He told us everything. How dad made him feel chosen. How mom called him the son they deserved. How he was told we were unstable, angry, dangerous. They built their whole story on your absence. He said to me, said you abandoned them. That you were bitter because you couldn't measure up. He paused. I believed it. He didn't say it to be cruel. He said it because it was true. I tried to leave once, thought maybe I'd outgrown it, but every time they pulled me back, promised inheritance, legacy, love. He looked down. I thought it was loyalty, but it was dependency. They needed me to hate you. It kept them in control. We sat in silence for a long moment, listening to the river. Then he said something we didn't expect. I want to help. We didn't know what that meant until he pulled out his phone. He had taken photos of a ledger one dad kept hidden in the garage in a locked ammo box, a full financial log, trust withdrawals, off-the-books cash gifts, loans to cousins, payments to hush up a minor car accident Jenna's ex had caused. And this one line, circled in red, $12,000, miss, expenses, week of Nathan's removal. Proof, actual documented proof. We used it, quietly. We sent copies of the ledger pages to family members who had stayed silent. The ones who claimed neutrality. The ones who said, it's not my place. Now it was. One aunt replied with 5 words. Now it makes sense. Finally, an uncle said he'd testify if needed. Even the church board where dad was still listed as a trustee got the documents. A week later, his name vanished from their website. No announcement, no ceremony, just gone. Then Jenna played the final card. She brought the kids to the old house not to stay, but to visit. To make a point, she knocked. Mom answered. Jenna handed her a small wrapped package. Inside a framed photo of the 3 of us, me, Jenna, and Colin as kids. On the swings at the lake, the same image Colin had left under our door. On the back, Jenna had written, you used to have a family. She didn't wait for a response. She turned and walked away. We found out later Mom sat on the porch for nearly an hour, clutching that frame like it was an anchor in a storm she couldn't escape. She didn't cry. She didn't move, because sometimes guilt is heavier than grief. After that, it all slowed down. The war was over. Not with a bang, but with silence. They didn't contact us, not even once. No rants, no passive-aggressive messages, just nothing. A few weeks later, the house went on the market. The listing photos were blurry, the asking price way too high for the market. It screamed desperation. They didn't send a forwarding address, just vanished. The only sign they'd been there at all was a whisper through distant cousins. Quiet apologies. I didn't know it was that deep. Wish we had seen it sooner. But the truth, they did know. They just chose the path of least resistance. Dad made loyalty look like love. Mom made silence look like protection. And it worked until it didn't. Jenna got a new job. Better hours. Actual benefits. Her boss respects her. The kids thriving. More laughter. Fewer questions. Me, I finally finished building the fire pit at the cabin. We go there some weekends now, just us. We grill. Jenna reads. The kids try to catch frogs and never succeed. It's not fancy, but it's ours. We don't need peace from them anymore. We made our own. But then 2 weeks ago, a letter arrived. No return address, just our names. Handwritten in that same script Mom used on birthday cards. Inside one page, no apology, no begging, just this. We thought we were doing what was best. We were wrong. We lost everything. Don't come looking for it. I read it once, didn't even flinch, didn't show Jenna right away. The kids were asleep and she was laughing at a baking show. She looked free. I waited until morning. When I showed her, she didn't cry. She folded the letter, slid it into the drawer next to the batteries and expired coupons. Then said quietly, we didn't lose anything. And she was right. They lost their stories, their control, their empire of silence. We gained the truth. And each other. If you had told me a year ago that I'd be waking up in a house with Jenna's kids playing in the hallway and a legal deed with my name on it hanging over a fireplace we don't even use, I would have laughed in your face. Not because I didn't want it, but because I never thought it was possible. I was raised to believe that family meant sacrifice, that being the quiet one was noble, that biting your tongue until it bled was how you showed love. Turns out, that's just how they kept us in line. But the day we changed the locks at the lake house was the day we stopped asking permission to be seen. It didn't end in one grand finale. It ended in layers. 1 week after Mom's letter arrived, we got a voicemail. Blocked number, untraceable. It was Dad. His voice was cracked. Not angry, not shouting, just hollow. He didn't apologize. He didn't even mention what he'd done. He just said, "I hope one day you'll understand." I didn't return the call. Neither did Jenna. Because we already do understand. We understand that he never saw us as people, just roles, utilities, pieces that needed to fit where he wanted them. Jenna as the obedient daughter who never left town. Me as the son who'd inherit the headaches and never question the rules. And when we broke the script, he wrote us out, but we didn't disappear. We rewrote everything. Jenna and I created a joint account, not just financial, but legal. She's my co-owner, co-author, co-strategist in everything now. We split responsibilities for the property. We tag team grocery runs. We rotate bedtime stories. Her kids call me Uncle M, and I've never corrected them. One day, they'll ask what really happened, and we'll tell them, not to turn them against anyone, but to show them that silence isn't peace, and loyalty doesn't mean obedience. Colin surprisingly stayed in touch. He doesn't say much, just sends texts every now and then. Made it through another week. Found a photo in the attic. You were in it. He hasn't come back to the lake house. Not yet. But we told him he could. He earned that much. We found out later through a friend of a friend that he left his job at the real estate firm. Something about personal ethics. Word is, he's been doing freelance work out of town. Low profile. We sent him a copy of the trust paperwork. Didn't ask him to sign anything. Didn't demand loyalty. We just let him know if he ever wanted to claim his piece of the story. He could. No one replied to the family group since our last post. Not even the distant cousins who always had something to say. It's like they're all holding their breath, waiting for someone else to make the first move. But we're done with waiting. We rebuilt everything they tried to tear down, and we did it quietly. That's the thing about revenge stories. You expect fireworks, big speeches, maybe even lawsuits and slaps across marble kitchen islands. But real revenge, it's silent, it's measured. It's sitting on a porch at sunset, watching your niece try to roast a marshmallow over a candle and thinking, we made it. It's walking into the cabin that was once a war zone and finding nothing but calm. It's knowing you never needed their approval, just the freedom to live without their permission. We've had moments, of course. Mom's best friend, someone we called Aunt D growing up, ran into Jenna at the grocery store. She looked older, unsure, said, "I don't know what really happened, but I hope you're happy now." And for once, Jenna didn't flinch. She just smiled and said, "I am," then walked away. And that was it. No need to explain. No need to rehash. Let them wonder. Let them fill in the gaps. Because the truth is already out there, and those who cared to see it already did. Dad's last known address was a rental in another county. We checked. Just once. No curiosity, just closure. The trust fund is still locked. The cabin is still ours. And the silence. It's beautiful. For the first time, we're not tiptoeing. We're planting things. Literal ones. Jenna started a garden in the backyard. Tomatoes, herbs, lavender. The kids named the scarecrow Cousin Greg. Don't ask. I'm planning to build a shed. Real tools. Real work. The kind Dad used to say I'd never be cut out for. Ironic, really. He raised me to follow. Now I lead. Sometimes people ask if we'd ever reconcile. The answer, maybe, but only if they meet us where we are, not where they left us. They'd have to start from scratch. No manipulation, no guilt, no conditions. And even then, it wouldn't be about rebuilding trust. It'd be about acknowledging what they broke. Until then, we're good. We've had game nights that actually end in laughter. And we've hosted holidays where no one storms off. The kids made drawings for every room in the cabin and we framed them like museum pieces. Because that's what they are. Proof of something we made ourselves. Something no one can erase. And every time we light the fire pit, pour a drink, and watch the smoke drift upward, I think the same thing. We didn't just take back what was ours. We built something they never had. A family that actually chooses each other. So now, if you've made it this far, thank you. Seriously, if you've ever felt like the outsider, the forgotten one, the problem child who just asked too many questions, you're not alone. You're not broken. You're just waking up. And I want to hear from you. Was I right to go this far? Did they deserve what came? Would you have done the same? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know how you would have handled it. Let's talk. And if this story resonated with you, share it. Like, subscribe. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't fire, it's a garden, and this one's finally blooming.